So my name is Dee, and I'm very happy to lead this panel or moderate this panel on digitizing and looking at mental health and how we can use technology to, it's just the way that we're going. So I'm going to dive right into it and have each of our panelists introduce yourself and tell us about your company in 2 sentences. I'm going to have Jonathan go first.
Who's Jonathan?
You.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Great to meet all of you here. So my name is Jonathan Seah. I'm with Zupe Group Limited. We are a Hong Kong health tech company. Our company is the first social commerce platform for the wellness community. And we essentially empower anyone who wants to look better, anyone who wants to be stronger, and anyone who wants to live longer with the right knowledge, the right tools, and right experts.
All right, thank you. I think we can all agree we want to look better, be stronger, live longer, right? All right, J-Dub, I'm going to go to you.
Great. My name is Jonathan Wen. Well, nice name, by the way. Just curious, how many Jonathan do we have here? So I'm with IronMind. So we are the AI solution-based company, specifically helping the mental health issues. So specifically, our mission is to transforming mental health through AI solutions. Our specific vision is to empower clinicians so that they can streamline the workload, and also helping patients, they will be able to receive the personalized treatment. So with the help of AI agents that we're building, by the way, our booth is right there. So there are 3 things that we would like to achieve. One is to optimize the workload for the clinicians. Second, we're here to personalize the treatment plan for the patients, and then so that we can increase the operational efficiency for the whole hospitals, clinics, and not to mention insurance companies. And the third things that we wanted to do is to basically collaborate with all different third parties, like within the clinic, hospitals, insurance companies, by using APIs so that we can do the secure exchange data. So that we can get more data analytics and train our AI agents. And we started the company in San Francisco a year ago, and we are now expanding to Asia. Hong Kong is our first spot here. So,
Great, thank you. And I'm going to hand it to our 3rd panelist, to Dustin.
Who's not a Jonathan.
Yes. We've got the D's on either side.
Yes, yeah, it's good to anchor that way. Good afternoon, so I'm Dustin. I lead EY-Parthenon's financial services strategy practice in Asia. For those of you who don't know EY-Parthenon, we are the strategy brand. You guys know it. You don't know. The strategy brand for EY. We advise, and I advise primarily large financial institutions on their organic strategies, how do they grow, how do they develop their markets, and then a lot of work around mergers and acquisitions. So whether that's buying into another financial institution, but more importantly over the last couple of years, it's been a lot of work around investing in health tech, insurtech, and then working through on different partnership opportunities. So happy to be here. Thanks.
All right. Well, I guess my first questions are really for our 2 Jonathans, and it's really around your business, because I know there's maybe a personal element to it. And so, what had you start your startup? And maybe you can share with us a little bit of what inspired that.
Sure. So I'm a physician by training. Went to med school in Dublin and worked as a physician for a few years, and then very naturally transitioned to the world of banking after I went to business school. And I was running healthcare groups, running hospital groups in Asia, primarily Southeast Asia, here and also in China, up until 2017. So it's about 5-6 years ago. So thank you, Davina. So my experience was all in the world of conventional hospital services, healthcare services. And then in 2017, my wife was diagnosed with a form of cancer. And we were advised for her to get a hysterectomy. And this was, of course, quite devastating to us, because at that point in time, we hadn't had our children yet. And we were, of course, very concerned about the prospects of surrogacy and all that. and so I was very fortunate to be connected to a uncle of mine who practiced what we could now call functional medicine or integrative medicine. And he suggested that we combine conventional medical therapy, and that is essentially chemotherapy, but with high-dose supplementation and nutrition programs. And we were very, very fortunate. After 6 months, she was diagnosed to be clear of that cancer. And a few months later, she got pregnant with her first kid. So for me, it was a life-changing event because, thank you. No, it was truly remarkable. But what was more remarkable was that for me, as a physician, or at least in the business of healthcare for, at that time, over 20 years, it was new to me. The fact that you could change the trajectory of illness, not just with pharmaceutical medications, but also with changing your lifestyle, changing your nutrition, changing your supplementation. It blew my mind. And so I spent the next year really delving into this, researching it, and I realized that unlike what I had been trained to believe, that everything that was in pharmaceutical grade medication was kind of woo-woo medicine, that there's actually a lot of research now that backs what has now become very mainstream over the last 10 to 15 years, that you can change your likelihood of developing a disease or not by your lifestyle choices and also with supplementation and other therapies. So for me, that led me down a path of why is it that me as a person of 20-odd years of healthcare experience not know this? I mean, I felt this is crazy, right? And so I realized that the structure of industry there is a problem, and I've heard this earlier today too from other speakers. The industry structure currently supports the timing and the tools are wrong. Timing because most of the focus, expenses, government expenditure, corporate expenditure is about finding a disease after it's happened to you, and then treating with expensive medications or surgery. And the focus really should be put forward. And so, about 5 years ago, just after this happened, I decided to leave the world of conventional hospital management and to go into the wellness space, or what we now call the functional wellness space. And so I started a functional clinic, one of the first functional medicine clinics in Hong Kong. We are still trying for that business to grow into China. But then one thing that I came to realize after about 4 or 5 years of running that business is that it's very expensive. It's fantastic if you have the money to pay for very high-end tests and very high-end products, but Pareto principle, right? I mean, we believe that if you spend 20% of the cost, you can actually achieve 80% results if you know what to do. And so about a year and a half ago, we started the Zupe project. And the Zupe project essentially is a way for us to lower the cost of this knowledge and increase access to the best tools and products in the world of functional wellness. And this is a social commerce platform that we are creating, and we hope to launch in about a month's time. So very happy to share that with everyone here today. So that's Zupe, and that's how we went on this path.
Thank you. And can you just tell us one follow-up question? What does Zupe stand for, or why the name Zupe?
Zupe is actually a contraction of the word super health. And for us, what super health means is not just the absence of disease, but to have a high level of health that not only allows you to hopefully have a lower incidence of disease, but also to have better performance and potentially also to look better. So that's Zupe, Z-U-P-E.
Got it. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to move on to J-Dub, because we're going to call you J-Dub to differentiate you from the other Jonathan. Can you tell us a bit about IronMind.AI?
So 3 main drivers. One is that I'm going to read the quote, or the research that we found is that it is reported that in Hong Kong, on average, one psychiatrist, they need to take care of 761 patients with mental illness, 1 to 100 to 761. And the other, and each therapy session lasts about 5.6 minutes, and that's for patients with psychosis. Second point that I want to share is that the average wait time to see a psychiatrist specialist is about 2 years. That's for standard case. So for severe case, yeah, you can speed up the time, but that means that you probably need to wait till the situation is very severe, or see a private practitioner that costs like $2,000 or $3,000 for 45 minutes. So that you know the kind of scale that I'm looking at. So that's what I've been observing based on the research. And it is very consistent from where I live in San Francisco and the United States. The situation, the supply and demand is completely out of proportion. Second thing is that at the personal level, I went through my own transformation because 30 years ago when I moved to San Francisco, I drowned, I lost conscious, I was in coma for 5 minutes. So technically, I survived, and this is my second life. And after that, I have my little phobia probably for 10 years. I wasn't able to walk near the lake or even not to mention swimming pool. But in about 10 years ago, I started doing cycling, swimming, and also running. So up to this year, I've already completed 12 Ironmans. And so this is kind of a life-changing event. In about 2 weeks, I'll be swimming across. Thank you. And actually, this is the shirt that I got from last year from Ironman California. So happy to share and see the kind of bruises that I have. So some holes in here as well. So long story short, these are the main drivers. But on the other hand, last year, actually, I helped a Harvard psychiatrist to build a digital platform for fast-tracking the onboarding process for seeing the patient and then come up with a treatment plan, and not to mention the recovery process. So that platform has already onboarded seeing about 1,000 patients already. So similar structure that I'm trying to implement is in APAC, because in Asia, specifically in Hong Kong, maybe Taiwan, Korea, the younger teenager population, the suicidal rate is pretty scary. So what I'm trying to do is that basically helping the clinicians, and that means psychologists, psychiatrists, so that they can reduce the workload, and then they will be able to scale up and see more patients. So that's ultimately my goal. And my background is in digital transformation. I spent 20 years in helping banks making more money, or increasing operation efficiency, meeting the KPI, OKR, and all these. That means like 15 years ago, I started doing mobile banking, and last 6 years we do API, open banking, SDK, and all that kind of good stuff, so that we will be able to see the similar transformation hopefully can be done in the digital health space, so that we can see more, I would say, more improved patient outcomes.
And do you think that the wait time is so long in Hong Kong because of the technology that's in the way, or what are you seeing from coming into the market? And
I think it's a mix of supply and demand, and also the awareness of the general public, because I think there's a tremendous stigma of identifying either that person, he's having some mental issues, or probably a show of hands. Do you know how many people that suffer from mental illness? Do you know someone in this room, your friends or coworkers and all this? I think, I see some last year. So I think that's the kind of, situation or opportunity that I see, because for a lot of nonprofits right now, I see that they have put together some anti-stigma program that basically educate people, saying that, hey, you know what? If you have mental health, whether it's depression, anxiety, or or OCD, or some other issues, right? It is okay. It is like having a flu, or some sort of regular challenges, right? It's okay to talk to your friends, or speak it out, so that they can get help accordingly. So.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. So I get that we have a little bit of information on how you both started your businesses. My question is for you to share with us a bit more about the framework, I guess, or the systems that you use for your platforms. And maybe for Dustin, from your perspective, what is it that you look for when you're assessing a company that's in the health space, or any insights that you see in terms of what consumers want or what companies are looking at?
Sure. Yeah, maybe I'll start and you guys can jump in. For me, it's been really interesting. So over the last couple of years, we've been working with primarily insurance companies, but also some of the banks who have seen this trend towards health and wellness as a way to get, I think, closer to clients, closer to customers, allowing them to have different type of interaction other than just checking a bank balance or filing a claim. And it's really interesting because it's win-win, right? So if we can get a better outcome for the policyholder, if they can have a healthier life, if they can be healthier, certainly good for the insurance company, less claims, but also it builds a better bond and builds a better interaction. So it's no longer transactional. And I think that's been the goal. When we start looking at companies to invest in, and it's different for, I always say with a deal, every deal is a little bit different, but primarily we're looking for a few things. So one, we're looking at, is this an idea that is going to create value for a client? Is this something that someone's going to get excited about? And a lot of times there's some really cool ideas out there, but you don't necessarily see why it's going to work. And so having a founder with a vision who can articulate why this is valuable and why this is going to be something that somebody ultimately will pay for is really important. In terms of frameworks, we do look, sort of on the revenue side, we look at, especially, depending on what stage it's in, is this company making revenue? If not, we're looking at activity. So how many people have signed up? How many people are active? How often are they active? What do they do? How long do they stay on the site? So keeping those metrics are really important. On the cost side, we're looking at how are you allocating a resource? How are you spending your money? How quickly are you burning through that money? And then, of course, there's that model that we have to produce at the end that says, are you going to run out of money before you get to the revenue that you need? All of these things come together. But I think, and that's kind of business school 101. When it really comes down to it, though, what we're looking at often is a founder and a management team. And we're looking for them to be mature, to have done this before, to be able to articulate the risks and the challenges and give comfort that they know it's not going to go according to the business plan. No business plan ever survives, right? But it's the fact that you've got a plan, you've got contingencies, and that you know how to react, I think that are really most important. So.
Yeah, so I hear, other than the business 101, in terms of, are you managing and allocating your finances right? Do you have the right people? For our founders, what can you share with us that, you're doing without maybe giving away too much? And it'd be interesting to hear, Dustin, from your perspective as well, any advice in terms of where Zupe is going, and then with both companies, actually. Yeah. Do you want to go share with us about Zupe?
Sure. So I guess one of the things that I've learned, over the few years that I've been around, is to ensure that I complement any skill set issues that I personally might have with a strong team, as mentioned before, Dustin. And I think one thing that we realized very early on with Zupe is that our core target audience are folks between, let's call it, 30 to 50, all right, 30, 50, and I'm a little bit north of that. So I thought very importantly, if our core audience is, let's call it 30 to 50, more female than male, it was very important for us to a team that embodies our target audience, very, very important at all levels. And so I'm going to embarrass a few people here, but can the Zupe folks in the audience stand up, please? Sorry, guys, putting you on the spot there. So if you look at the team members that are here today with us, say hello, everyone. They are certainly way younger than I am. So that's very important for us, that we have a team that understands the market, right? And we do that, obviously, with having team members that represent the target audience. That's number one. Number two is we complement that with team members that have perhaps a little bit more operating experiences, Dustin mentioned. So I found a partner. Our co-founders, the four of us co-founders, three of us met through an organization called YPO. So these are folks I've known for many, many years. One of them is our co-CEO and CTO, because that's, of course, a very important aspect of a tech company, to have a CTO. And also then we had another partner who represents the fundraising side, and another partner who represents the market. She's unfortunately not here today because she just had her baby about a week ago. So I think it's very important that a team complements and enhances the capabilities of our original co-founders. So that, for me, is a very important element.
All right, Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I would step back and look into the healthcare system in general, because I got a fresh pair of eyes to see that basically a lot of healthcare system, regardless of Asia, US, the product is illness. So hospitals, they sell illness to determine how sick you are, where you are, and the treatment. That means pharmaceutical companies and all these, right? But I think now we can do a lot more. We can inject something called positive psychology. That means, for example, gratitude, exercise, breathing, meditation. We call it alternative medicine or alternative, health. But on the other hand, we see a lot of, say, populations like, running marathons or yoga, right? Probably you guys have, everyone has a lot of friends that does yoga. Probably just met a couple yoga teacher here. And functional medicine, I met a gentleman yesterday, Mr. Price, we need to look into holistic health and optimal health. For example, look into your gut, your diet, your sleeping pattern, and all these, right? So I think that mindset is important. So back to the business that we are building. So we have AI agents, actually that went through, injected, embedded through the entire end-to-end solution, all the way from the intake process, like filling out PHQ-9 score, G87, ESS, sleeping disorder, to assess whether you have anxiety, depression and sleeping disorder, right? So that's one of the agents that we built. And then we have something called Inscribe. That means that during the conversation, the special agent will be able to pull your medical history, your previous visit histories, and then not to mention, the meditation, the lifestyle that you have, and to validate it through the conversation with the clinician. So that we'll be able to transcribe and then validate all these data. And then during that session, the physician will be able to deep dive into specific questions for the patient. For example, we do have that suggestion or the recommendation for the doctor to see, hey, you know what, that person may be having or drinking like 6 cups of coffee. Why giving that person antidepressants instead of having, hey, you know what, do a caffeine detox. As simple as that, I think that's the mindset that we need to somehow, unfortunately, educate the clinicians on that.
Yeah,
right?
and with that though, how do you take all that information? Because I still see it in a lot of our system in Hong Kong anyway, our medical system, a lot of it is still handwritten and only certain codes are put into the computer if they have a computer system, and it's not all the same.
Yep.
Every nurse, every doctor, or every clinic will have their own kind of abbreviation. So how can you solve that issue?
So I think the mindset is this is the half full or the half empty of the glass. I think that's the question that we want to know. For example, there's a lot of manual processes that we're seeing right now. Is that opportunity or the obstacles? So I think for the technology that we have been seeing a lot of tractions because one of my co-founders actually is a forensic psychologist that he used the system for seeing probably 30 different patients in Hong Kong already, that he can see the workload has been reduced at least 50% of the time, and not to mention the treatment plan that will take traditionally 3 to 4 days of time to compress it within 30 minutes. Wow. And that person, actually, that psychologist was able to inject his own, I would say the personal experiences, saying that, hey, you know what, maybe this medical treatment we can further develop and deep dive into. So it's a continuous conversation between the patient and the doctor so that they will be able to deep dive more and consider more different angles on that.
It's very exciting to think about how AI and technology can really impact the way that medical workers can actually do what they love and what they've trained to do, which is to provide care versus just data entry, right? Which is also a big part of their job from a liability perspective. So it'd be interesting to keep following, who you work with in Hong Kong and yeah.
And not to mention, I think for someone who's been trained for being a psychologist or psychiatrist, that takes that investment, like 8 to 10 years time, and they are paid to do the administrative work. I think it's a little bit too pricey for that.
Yeah.
So that if we can optimize their workflow and then reduce the administrative time, I think both fronts will be seeing the value drastically.
So it's a call out as well for younger students in Hong Kong to go and consider, psychiatry as a stream of study as well.
Yeah, but make sure you have blessings for all the compliance regulations like GDPR, HIPAA compliance, and FHIR, all this kind of good stuff, because I came from a bank that without don't try to upload your treatment or whatever patients on the ChatGPT, even though we can use VPN on that. But keep it in a safe environment, because at the end of the day, those are the liabilities and also the privacy of the data that, as a clinician, we do have that responsibility to protect.
Can I just add a little bit? I think there's so we've got an AI component in Zupe that allows you to fact check and educates you before you create a post, or as you're reading through a post, understand it better. But I think what's really important, and what we've come to understand is, and someone else earlier today mentioned this, is that if you look at most LLMs, they really are based, the information that they will feed to you is based on the database that they have. And unfortunately for us today, as many of you I'm sure will agree, if you go to the average physician, of, say your GP, and you ask them, is there any benefit to changing my, say, my dietary supplement plan, for example? Will it change my health trajectory? The vast majority of doctors will tell you it doesn't make a difference. The reality is actually very different. If you actually look at the research, it's actually different. Unfortunately, though, the base of knowledge on the internet currently is based on this very conventional and very conservative view. So if you ask an LLM now, is there any benefit to, for example, to be somewhat controversial, would getting an IV intravenous treatment of vitamins at high dose help cancer? And by and large, most clinicians will tell you, no, it doesn't. But the reality is it does. It's now well proven that it will reduce side effects. It will not replace chemotherapy, but it will enhance the effect of chemotherapy. And that's just one example. So to address that, what we've done, obviously, at Zupe, is we have created our own database that's proprietary, based on functional medicine, based on integrated therapies that have research backing. But more importantly, we think that we've got to balance that with real people. We think that, at least not in our lifetimes, we don't think AI is going to replace all the professionals in the world. So we believe that Zupe, part of the value that we're trying to create at Zupe is this hive mind, a hive mind of the best practitioners, whether it's dietitians, nutritionists, functional medicine practitioners, that models, mental wellness folks. We bring them all together to be able to give you the benefit of their collective experience. And that, we think, is very valuable, because unlike AI, again, AI, there is a time lag. From the time that a LLM scrapes information from, say, a journal, to when it's available as an output, maybe months, maybe years. Whereas if it's an active community, which is what Zupe is, that maybe something comes up yesterday. There's an experience that a user has from last week. It's there for you to benefit from. And we think that's very, very important. So essentially, we think of it as the human AI and the mechanistic AI. And we think it's so important to have that balance. To further add to that, we also believe that there is huge value in having an open source knowledge base. Not just from professionals and practitioners who are experts, which of course is very valuable. But for many of us, most of us here in this room, you probably may not have a situation which would have you say, I need to go to a clinic to get advice. Maybe it's something fairly simple, like what can I do to improve my hair quality? What can I do to lose a bit of weight? If it's not a point where you're morbidly obese, you probably would not go to a clinic, but you want to benefit from the experience, the knowledge of your fellows. And so the hive mind created from users is also super important. So I believe that down the road, whether it's for healthcare or for other sectors, this combination of a technology AI plus an AI created from our collective knowledge as users is incredibly important.
And in this marketplace that you kind of create within your platform, how do you verify who gets to be someone who shares that knowledge?
Good question. So we have two levels. We have knowledge, of course, shared between regular users like you and I, and that, of course, is going to be based on actual experiences, whether it's for a service or a product, and that, of course, the way that we experience the Ubers of the world, or food pandas of the world is you will rank it. You will, if you get advice or input from someone who's, after a few experiences, you realize that advice is of no value, then you can rank them lower, right? Now, it's different, however, with regards to our professionals. So we verify our professionals on Zupe. We actually will check their resumes, or check their qualifications. So if you say you're a verified expert on Zupe, that means you have a diploma or a degree from a recognized institution, right? And I think that's an important balance. But not everyone needs that. Not everyone needs to reach out to one of these experts to get a consultation on our platform. I would expect that maybe only 10% would benefit from that. But the rest of 90%, we benefit from sharing free knowledge. And that is so important. The democratization of useful knowledge is critical if we are to bring down total cost of care. And that is what we're trying to do at Zupe. We want to bring down total cost of care for you as an individual, for you as a family, as a company, and as a government. And this is what I think some speakers earlier today also mentioned. Many jurisdictions in the world now realize that if you want to reduce the total cost of healthcare expenditure, you've got to start early. And not necessarily just with lifestyle changes. It's with dietary changes, it's of course with exercise, but of course with some, we believe, some more aggressive supplementation, for example, or even devices, for example, right? So shifting the time scale to when you start spending a little bit of money to prevent having to spend a lot of money at the end of one's lifespan.
Do you have something to add?
Yeah, I did. I was listening to this, and it's fascinating because a lot of my clients start with this premise that people don't want to give up their data, that they're concerned about privacy. So we did some research, which was really interesting because I think it's this Asia data, 80% of the people that were surveyed in the survey we did said if there's value, if they felt that they would get personally better healthcare, better outcomes, they would give up their data. What's more interesting is as you segment that by income level and you get to sort of a high net worth and kind of a more affluent, it's something like 90%. So, to me, what you're talking about really resonates because if it's something that improves outcome, if it's something that gives real value, then people are willing to give up their data. They're willing to plug into this, what do you call it, hive mind?
Yes, open source, hive mind,
absolute
knowledge.
Sci-fi,
Like
but
a community, it sounds like.
Community
Yeah,
sounds
like a community.
less diabolical, but yes. But I was really just listening to this and thinking that it is something that there's demand for. And in this trade-off that everyone's worried about is what happens to my data. As long as you can, to your point, J-Dub, meet all of those requirements around, the regulatory side, if you're providing value, people will sign up for it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, Dustin. So absolutely we agree that altruistically, I think we all want everyone to be healthy around us, but we have also added some incentives for folks to share. So, for example, and this is, by the way, obviously we're about to launch, so we have yet to prove whether it works or not. We actually incentivize sharing, not only with this hope that you get that in return, but we actually allow you to benefit by a small incentive for every recommendation that is actualized. So if someone actually purchases a service or a product, not in a huge way that you can change your day job, but enough to make it fun. So you can track that how many folks actually follow your advice, how many folks actually try a product that you recommend. And not only a professional KOL or ambassador, every single person. So we are also democratizing the influencer space within the world of wellness. And well, we'll see if it works.
All right. Sounds like fun. Can't wait to see it.
I have a bit of a challenge for you, though. So I fit into your demographic of your target audience of a female in the ages of 30 to 50. Now, I've looked at your team. They're beautiful. And, my challenge to you would be, what would it look like for Zupe to stretch this offering to 20s to 60s? Because I tell you, my grandmother is 98 and she's very tech savvy. And she can get online and she can share information, and she's had many children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And I think there's a big space here as well to support our aging community, which is also a large community. So I know you're not there yet maybe, But what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Look, as I said, I myself fall outside of a target age group, right? Which is quite sad. But you're absolutely right. I think what we have seen over the last few years is an increasing interest in longevity, as we saw from our previous panel. There's a huge amount of interest amongst folks that are looking not just to increase their current performance, but to live potentially to 120, for example, right? And so we believe that there is certainly a need for this sharing of knowledge also. But at the same time, to go back to, from a corporate standpoint, from a business standpoint, it is so important to focus on a specific demographic to make sure that works well first before we extend. But we certainly are getting that already. We're getting that request. And maybe as an example, we recently took a small amount of investment from a company that's been a bit of press recently, a New World Group, to help with one of their health services groups because they've realized that there is this need now among the community to understand better about what's available out there before a decision is made, beyond making a decision by just asking your friends and family. So we're trying to bridge that gap between your friends and family and the professionals. And we believe we can do that with, again, this community.
Yeah, so one thing I want to share is that actually we have signed an MOU with a partner in Australia. So that company actually is specifically targeting to elderly community, specifically dementia and some other aging challenges that we face. So what we're seeing is that we can see a lot of segmentation, particularly not just the age, but we can look at it from gender perspective, the lifestyle, diet, sleep, and all different demographics, so that we can really understand and deep dive into what kind of problem that they are having and what kind of potential solutions that we can look into from both preventive and also like a kind of reactive situation. Because unfortunately, the treatment is pretty much the same, but on the other hand, well, I think we kind of talk about how much money that we can invest on the preventive side so that we can potentially saving the cost at the end, right? So I think that's the clear ROI that we have been seeing already. That's why I think aging population is one sector, but on the other hand, we also would be looking at teenager population as well, because the lifestyle and also the data points would be very different. We can look at it through social media, we can look at it from the diet perspective and exercise, completely different.
I completely agree with that. I think there is so much that we can use technology for, but specifically as to what JW just said, and to touch on what Dustin said, we've got to create value. We've got to create value for our users. We've got to create value for our clients. And I don't know, how many of you have heard of Brian Johnson and the Longevity Olympics in the audience? Great. So as you guys know, so Brian Johnson is a very well-known biohacker, right? He purportedly spends $2 million a year on his own health to look super young, right? And he does look incredibly young, right? But he spends $2 million with a team of professionals. Now, and there is actually a website called the Longevity Olympics that tracks, based on your biomarkers, how young you are biologically. What's really interesting is he's not number one. Right? He's usually somewhere between number 4 and number 6 on this Longevity Olympics. There are folks ahead of him. And in the press every year, you'll find that the folks that in the top 5 are often folks that spend a fraction of that. Like last year, the lady who won was a lady out of the UK who spends about £1,000. It's just not a little bit, about £1,000, a year in terms of what she buys in supplements. So this is the value of what we're trying to say exists already amongst all of us, right? And if you look at the folks that have started to push wellness, or what we call scientific or functional wellness, into the mainstream, folks like Dave Asprey or Ben Greenfield, yes, of course, Mark Hyman, all these chaps. Many of them, yes, are medical folks, but many of them are actually not. But they are now actually far ahead of the curve vis-a-vis the average physician. And I'll guarantee that your average GP, whether it's here in Hong Kong or elsewhere in the world, is probably not as up to speed in terms of the latest for longevity or for wellness as he or she ought to be. That knowledge exists amongst many of us, many of our friends, our family who are voracious readers. You mentioned about older folks being interested in this. My dad, who's 81 this year, he goes through, I think, 2 or 3 books every week, summarizes, and then annoyingly sends it out to all his friends and family members because he wants to share that knowledge. And we see that all the time. But the benefit of that, some benefit is that if we have the access to free knowledge, we may never need, until a much later point in time in our lives, to spend money paying a professional. Now,
So hang on, I'm gonna pivot because I'm also mindful of time, and this is perfect. I want to know, and if you can share, like how do you make money? How do you make your kind of they're both very well intended, let's say, in terms of businesses, and it sounds like you've got the right people and you've got case studies, but how will your businesses make money? And I think Dustin as well, from your perspective, what do you see as maybe missing, or what would they need in order to have it be something that other companies would be interested in adopting?
Should we answer quickly? Okay.
I'm going to give it to Dustin first.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening, and actually we caught up earlier and talked about subscription models. To me, it's a question of not only how are you making money, but who's paying for it, right? A model where people sign up for subscription, love that. That's pretty clear. We know where the money's coming from. A model where you're being paid for what you do by an insurance company because they see value in it. Love that because we know insurance companies have money to spend. A model where you're relying on individuals to download an app and pay for it gets a little bit murky to me. Then I start to challenge, okay, what's the main driver? How are they going to maintain this? How are you going to get them excited? But from the revenue side, that's really what I'm looking for is how are you making money? Who's paying it? And how sustainable is that going to be?
So I completely agree, the licensing model and also the subscription model and all this. But one thing that we're looking at is that we don't chase money. I think we attract money because if we can see the value, so we use something called MVP, which is the mission, value, and purpose. People look at it from our minimum viable product perspective, but we look into mission, what's the value and the purpose of this, say whether the investor, family office, or someone actually will be supporting us financially. So those are the things that we're looking at. But on the other hand, I think the most important thing is the cost of not doing anything, the opportunity cost for doing nothing. Can we afford not to do anything? Can we afford not to innovate? Can we afford not to take calculated risk? And not to mention embracing the technology that we have. So those are the part of our KPIs that we're looking at beyond just the money itself.
So for us, very simply, we monetize in 2 main fashions. Now, of course, the vision of our company is, it's stated in our vision statement, super health for all. And that is our goal. We want to help everyone reduce the total cost of care. But of course, we are a business, right? And so we monetize in 2 ways. We monetize when we match our users with professionals, because at some point you may need professional advice. So while it may not be everyone, we do expect that some numbers of our user base will need to reach out to a qualified mental wellness expert, reach out to a qualified nutritionist or a dietitian or functional health professional. And we, of course, we monetize that. We charge a fee for that. We also charge a fee for if you make a purchase through a recommendation from an expert, or if you make a purchase on the marketplace. That's number 2. And thirdly, we are, oddly enough, and quite coincidentally to what you mentioned, maybe serendipitously, we've had a number of insurance companies reach out to us because they see us as a friendly front end for folks that still don't understand too much about complex healthcare processes and who are still healthy. So that's also where we are seeing some potential partnerships.
All right. Well, thank you to our panel. Perfect timing. I guess I have 1 minute, and I wanted to open it up to anybody in the audience that had questions for anyone on the panel. All right. Well, any final closing thoughts from each of our panelists?
Yeah, just I've enjoyed meeting the 2 Jonathans and hearing about their business, and I'm always amazed at the innovation that's going on, particularly in Hong Kong. And so I'm heartened to see some really cool ideas. I can't wait to see you guys launch in the market, and then we should talk more about investments and other things that we can do.
So one final thought, I would like to just share the quote, my favorite quote that I like. So for doing any endurance sports, whether you're doing running, swimming, and biking, it only takes about 1% physical strength. and the rest is mental. So, keep that in mind every time when you go out, run, walk, swim, bike, and all these. So.
I just have 2 points. Firstly, shout out to Hong Kong Science Technology Park, who have been helping us the last couple of years. That's number one. Number two, and this is an open statement to everyone. I think some of you heard it today in different forms. There are countries in Asia now that have staked their place in the world of acute healthcare and medical tourism. Say Singapore for very complex services, Malaysia and Thailand obviously, and Korea. Hong Kong has a real opportunity to stake its place in the world of health and wellness for what I would call medical wellness. Right? No one's done it yet. No one's done it. Everyone wants to do it. Bali wants to do it, but you don't have the medical infrastructure. Thailand too. Singapore's too regulated. I'm a Singaporean, so I can say that. So there are barriers to entry to this space for many locations in Asia. Hong Kong, it's Hong Kong's game to lose, to be the center for innovation for medical wellness.
All right, thank you, everyone. Can I have a round of applause for our panel?